Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast, where the blueprint to understanding a new and unified world is in our shifting consciousness. Now here are your hosts, Angela Blaha and Velia Person.
All right, thanks everyone for joining us today. Hey Velia, how are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. All right, let's talk about receiving since we sort of left off with that last week. Let's talk like who among us listening today is ready to receive all the abundances, all the opportunities of the universe?
Why can I hear everybody saying me? My hands up in the air, right? Like I got this visual of like everybody's like, I want it. And here we're gonna put a twist on it today. Angela and I were just talking right before she hit the record button, and we're sharing how people do say they're ready to receive and they're excited about it. But we're going to show you that there's a lot of blocks that all of us are really not aware of that are preventing us from receiving the things and the design of our lives that we actually want in our lives. But a lot of them are subconscious. So we promise not to pick on you as harshly as we would, because there's a lot of things that are going to come to light in this episode. So thank you guys for joining us. We're super excited to be here to share some of the experiences that have, knocked us down a few times, but now we're back up again to make sure we're teaching you guys those things.
All right, receiving. So, we're talking about creating this new experience of consciousness, this whole shifting of who we are as a human race. But are we ready to receive the shift of the human race? And I've asked this question for probably the last 2 years is, okay, if we really want to shift, what do we want to shift into? Because, we say we want to shift, but if you really sit down and think about it, what is it that you're willing to shift into? And are you willing to receive it? So we've been talking about, these 22nd dimensional frequencies of unification, being more unified as a whole. And are we willing to do that? Like really willing to do that?
And everybody's questioning now, oh my gosh, what is it going to take to get there, right? Now everybody's nervous, but It sounds so exciting. And when we talk about it, Angela, at times, it doesn't sound like too good to be true. And what do I have to do? What's the catch, right? Is going to be a very common thought that people are, experiencing right now. And I mean, the words that we talk about, we say things like, it's not as hard as you think, but yet everybody is taught that things have to be so complicated. So when we talk about receiving, I think people have a hard time thinking that things can be received just like that, just with intention, just by you doing your part. And before we would say a lot like, do the work. And people are like, oh, I don't really want to do the work. I'm tired, or it hasn't gotten me anywhere, or whatever, right? But now we're talking more about getting ready to receive, like arms wide open, intention set, and you're really thinking about what you want in your heart, not what everybody has told you that you should have, right? Or what you have imagined. You know what's so funny, Angela, when you talk to people about it, many times they say things like for my family or for my friends or for whomever, but very rarely do you hear people who are trying to, heal and understand how to shift humanity. They don't think about what they want for themselves. And I think that I've run into that problem many times where some people just have no idea what they want because it's about them. What do you want? Not for somebody else. And that's where many people get stuck. So if that's you and you're listening, pay close attention, because Angela and I are going to share some information that's going to be super useful for you to help you shift mentality, because that's exactly what it is. It's a mindset, really. We get into the heart space and all that good stuff, but what have been your common experiences, Angela, when it comes to people not being able to receive, or you see they're hesitating? What have you experienced?
Well, just for example, one of my clients this morning sent me, so I have a Voxer program for soul mentoring, and she sent me this, and it says, I'm effing done with arguing for my own limitations. Falls right into what we're talking about today. And I was like, yes, thank God, she's ready. I almost started crying. But so we fight. We have these beliefs ingrained in us. I mean, they are imprinted in us for eons, from generation to generation to generation, right? That say that we aren't good enough. We aren't worthy enough. If you receive too much, then your ego pops in and you become whatever, you become a monger or whatever it is. But honestly, the natural way that humans were created was like, this is a playground for experiences and for learning. And in a playground, there's abundance. If you watch children out on a playground, they're just in abundance the whole time. They're like, wait, I want to go here, I want to go there, I want to do this, right? I mean, it's all about what can I experience and how much fun can I have? But we don't have that. That has all been shut down in our DNA. And the experiences of abundance are like, it's hard to say yes to receiving. I mean, I've had to overcome that. Like all of my clients have had to overcome that, and so I don't know. What have I experienced? I came from nothing, like literally the family that I was born into. We were extremely poor, alcoholic kind of family, some mental, emotional abuse, some physical abuse, I mean, so when you say, okay, well, I'm done with that, I'm going to lay down my parents' outline because it doesn't fit who I want to become. Like that's you saying yes to yourself. And there's a commitment. There's a deep internal commitment that takes place that you can't get anywhere else in the world. When you say yes to opening up to something different about who you are, that is like, that's a bomb, right? Like that just blows up everything within you. And it says, wait, okay, if I'm going to say that and I want that and I'm like going to change my behaviors to make that happen, who will I become?
Yeah. And that's the real scary part. And I think people have a hard time understanding that even if somebody does want to welcome in something new and receive, they can't even fathom what that looks like. And I want to share a story that came up as you were referring to, where you've been in your past, how your parents had a different outline, right? Mm-hmm. And thank you, Mom and Dad. I know you guys did the best that you could, but there's something coming in for me right now that I have to literally start designing for myself, right? And so thank you again to everybody who helped raise us and how they could raise us and everything, but we're being called to do something new. And so we haven't had it modeled to us. And I think that's why many of us struggle. Like my mom and dad always gave things off their back. And I would say that they were just so doing and giving, but they never gave enough to not have, right? And I would always give and be like, wait a minute, this is weird. And if somebody wouldn't buy me lunch, we talked about this earlier, like I have clients talking about, oh, I'm ready for abundance. I said, be quiet. You don't even like anybody buying you lunch. And we're laughing and we cried at the same time because how sad is it that you're talking about, oh yeah, I'm ready to receive. And then I say, look in your life and show me how you're ready. And I want everybody listening right now to look into their life after you're saying, me, I want everything. How do you feel if somebody is like wanting to buy you lunch? If somebody gives you a gift? And most people that I've worked with is like, oh no, I feel bad. Bad for what? From what I understand as far as energy exchange, right? When you allow somebody to give you something just because their heart desires it, you're allowing them to also have energy flow into them that's gonna also bless them. So I want to help you guys shift the way you're looking at things when it comes to receiving. As Angela shares a couple of reasons why we might have, trouble transitioning to the it's okay, I deserve this. And the story that comes up, Angela, is when we were in Ireland on a bus. We were out there having a great time. And you had bought a beautiful wool scarf. I love how Angela doesn't remember these stories, but when the time comes, it totally aligns. So yeah, I got to share this one. She bought a beautiful wool scarf. It was freaking freezing in Ireland. And I think a couple people had shared, they had gone to a thrift store there or afterwards. And they had bought this, I was on sale. And I kept hearing sale, discount. It was really cheap. And I turned over to Angela and she was just shaking her head like, I'm not doing it. I'm worth this. I'm abundant. I'm paying $1,000 for the scarf. I mean, it was a very nice scarf. She didn't pay $1,000. But what I'm saying is her face was like, no, I lived like that before on sales, cheap. No, I'm worthy. And then the look on your face and everybody looked at you like, why would you want to pay more for something if you can get it cheaper? And I remember your answer was because I can. Because I can, and I always will be able to. And that hit really heavy. Like I saw everybody's face drop, and it was a huge teachable moment for some people because we get caught up in like, I can just get near this, or I can just get that. I don't have to pay $50, $60, $80 for a scarf just because it's made of wool. But Angela wore that thing. And I can tell you that it was a representation of where she is right now in life, where she had come from. And I love when you share and you're super transparent about the things that you've overcome, Angela, because a lot of people, I believe, look at you and say, well, that's Angela Blaha. Like, she's a freaking alien. Like, she doesn't struggle. Like, she doesn't have. And I'm like, okay, it's a very common misconception. But when she had that scarf on, a simple, cute little scarf, and then the girls were looking at you, there was like 4 or 5 girls that were talking about sales, and you just had this like, no more. And that for me was a huge shift, because I myself love bargains, and I'm not saying I'm going to pass anyone up, but just the thought processes that take place, a lot of the belief systems that were imprinted in us from a very young age. Many of us would rather pay $80 for a scarf for a friend than to buy one for ourselves, right? So those are the things that we're going to encourage you guys to look at, because it's simple things, you guys. It doesn't have to be so complicated. And it's definitely self-assessment, Angela. I really think that people really need to be aware of their daily lives, the choices, again, whether or not you're okay with the friend buying lunch for you, because that speaks volumes about where you are energetically to allow the universe to give you the things that you say you want, and it won't give them to you unless you're ready. Yeah. And we want you guys to be ready.
Yes, because, 2023, for example, is all about self-mastery. Well, and moving forward into life, like 2023 to 27, these are years of self-mastery. The age of Aquarius is about self-mastery. When you can control these thoughts up here, your life drastically changes. You get up in the morning and you're thinking positively about yourself, and you're like, and so like, I don't get out of bed before meditation. Like, I meditate in bed, and I direct myself, my body, my emotions, my thoughts about how I want to feel today, right? What are the experiences I want to have today? What are the abundances I'm willing to accept today? And, connecting and talking to the universe. And, if there's something that I need to work through, then I want that brought forward right away so that I can make it happen, so that I can get on to all the pleasures of the world and all the abundances of the world. We are not here for pain and suffering. That is a mindset and a belief system that was created years ago to limit us. And I'll be damned, but we should not be believing in that. We should be believing in the abundances and all the opportunities of the universe. And then humanity can flourish and grow and create. And we can move into other dimensions of, where there's even more abundance. So, so I've never really, ever since I gave up my parents' belief system, I was like, those don't really fit who I want to be this year, this lifetime. So no, you can have those. I won't accept them. This is who I am. And this is who I want to be,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And again, it's not betrayal to your parents and the people that did, do that. So don't misunderstand. And Angela's very transparent. She's very grateful for where she came from. But when we have somewhere to compare it to, it speaks volumes from the growth that one experiences and just the heart that one has, because we get it, been there, done that. Right. And I think it's important to talk about, daily things. Like, I'm so glad you shared that, because some say, well, how do I do it? It's as simple as stay in bed and meditate and saying, okay, what are my intentions for today? How do I want today to go? And when you literally get to that point where your mindset matches the kind of life that you do actually want to live, you literally manifest that on a daily basis. And it's something as simple as, I'm making sure I'm not going to get out of my bed. I'm not going to check my phone before I start my day or whatever. There's small little habits and practices. So we're not just going to tell you what it is that we're going to help you get ready for. We're going to show you, because they're very simple steps. Angela just shared one step in the morning. Oh, I don't know how to meditate. Sit with yourself. Be grateful for the bed that you slept in the morning, and start figuring out what you want to do the first thing you get out of bed. What do you want to do the first thing you're going to do when you get out of bed? And I swear to you, it starts with just practices like that. Mm-hmm. And when you find that you're not off on the right foot, or you got off on the right side of the bed, get back in the bed. I've done that, and it's hilarious, and sometimes I'm joking, but I'm like, I'm going to do it. So yesterday I woke up, I had like 2 hours of sleep, and my alarm went off. I'm like, dang it. I was mad, Angela. And I'm like, oh, let me try that again. Like, really quickly. I'm like, oh, no, you're not starting like that. Let's try that again. And so there's also been times, you guys, and everybody can attest to this, I'm sure, I got out of bed and something just started off weird in the day. I literally jumped back in the bed. I said, I'm going to try this again. Like, I literally hit a rewind button and said, no, this is not, because you start understanding the value and the importance, you guys, of how you start off each day, each moment, each experience, we have the ability to go back and start over again and redesign how we want the energy to feel that day.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can do this at work, right? Like we always have these excuses of, oh, I work too many hours or I'm doing this and I don't have time. I'm going to say those are lies that you keep telling yourself so that you don't have to move forward. Those are self-sabotaging practices, because I keep like, here's 1, 2, 3, 4 different books on my desk. And I have 2 at the other business that we own. I have 2 over there, because this morning, for example, here's a good example. I was doing end of the month bookwork in one of our businesses, and I made a mistake, and I was like, oh, geez, like I never make a mistake on that kind of what I was doing. I never do. And I was like, okay, something's going on here. So I grabbed my pencil. I took like 3 minutes, time enough to go get a drink. And I wrote down and I journaled about it, like what's in my energy field that would distract me so much that I would make that kind of a mistake, right? And so I was like, okay, let's use our practices, right? So it doesn't take very long to do these kinds of things. I mean, I meditate twice a day, once before I get out of bed, just so that, the day is smooth and everything goes well. And I'm training my mind, right, to be what I want to be. And then I meditate like 4, 5, 6, just depends on in the afternoon. Sometimes it's at 2:00. But I meditate twice a day. Again, writing down all the kinds of things that, just distract me. And why would that be a distraction? Well, I was totally in some other universe this morning when I should have been like right here. And there's this reality, but so it was a lesson for me of like, oh, wait, come back here, and really be focused on what you're doing. Again, that's a part of self-mastery, right? Like those are things that are self-mastery kinds of things. And when you're open to receiving, you have to be in your mastery.
Oh, for sure. I love that you shared that example, because how many people, may mess something up and just continue to go on with their lives, and they don't understand they're carrying that chaotic energy all day long. So listen up, you guys, something super, super simple. Angela caught herself, she made a mistake. Oh, heck no, I'm not okay with this. Let me go back and find out why this happened. Why? Because when you get to the root causes of things, you guys, you fix it there. And what's birthed afterwards is not in chaos, right? How many of you guys go into a room and you forget, what you got, and now you're mad at yourself? There comes the self-talk too. Oh my gosh. Oh my God, what did I come in here for? I'm losing my mind and this. And you think you say all these things, and people don't understand how much that destroys them. And you could be like, oh, I'm just kidding. Or it's just because I'm sad. Stop, take a deep breath, right? Close your eyes. And if it's your keys you're looking for, say, hey, keys, can you please show me where you are? And this freaked me out when I first did it. And Angela, I remember my husband had lost his wallet, or I had lost something. And you're like, well, ask it where it is. I'm like, just ask me where it is. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she showed me, she's like, close your eyes and just ask it where there. So I told my husband that jokingly, and he did it. He's not a big old fan of whatever. He loves that I love what I do, but he just kind of like, okay, you do your thing. But that day he was frantically looking for his wallet. He asked it where it was. He goes, oh, baby, it's in the closet on the right-hand corner. And he goes, and it's right there. And so, hello, I know this stuff, right? I believe in this. And he weirded me out. So I'm like, and he goes, oh yeah, it's true. The fact that you can speak to energy that way, wallet, keys, whatever, a mistake in a book, right? Mm-hmm. If you can stop and get into the habit of not just continuing after you mess up, air quotes, or you make a decision you didn't, okay, you can't take it back. Stop and say, okay, I did what I did. Let me go ahead and fix that. So if you go back and you analyze and you ask these things and you stop instead of continuing that, you'll be surprised how much the dynamic changes. And it's going to be a huge teachable moment for you to say, wow, I used to normally do X, Y, Z, but now that I stopped, I noticed that I was a lot more calm. And that's what you're manifesting. So if you change the trajectory of how you're feeling about what you're doing, you get rid of the chaos and confusion, you are in complete control of what happens next. Try it and then let us know.
Yeah, had I continued on this morning without actually going back and saying, okay, well, why would I be making this kind of a mistake when this is not my norm? Right. And fixing it right in that moment, it would have carried on, I can guarantee, because I would have had that imprint in my energy and it still would have been there. Even now, like later on today, it still would have been there, and I still would not have healed myself or fixed it or whatever, right? Or got back onto my path instead of being distracted onto something else. See, how easy it is to get distracted and to stay distracted in the chaos, right? Because if we don't course correct, we're still out here floundering around, and then we get to the end of the day and it's like, oh my gosh, why did I make so many, and then all the crazy mind depletion comes in, and those I'm not worthy kind of thoughts. I mean, it gets compounded and compounded and compounded. And we have to stop doing that, because that's not what self-mastery is. Self-mastery is, I'm on this trajectory, I got distracted. Oh, I'm going to course correct back over here. Now I'm back to who I am.
I love it. Yeah. Course correction is a beautiful title for that. We're going to call it course correction instead of late. And you know what I love? When we teach you guys to stop doing something, it's not like just stop doing it, because it's a lot easier for us to be stop it. So that's why Angela and I understand the importance of replacement behaviors, right? If you're doing something and you're not getting the results that you want, you need to replace what you're doing. So we can say stop, but instead of doing this, do that. So instead of her just being okay with whatever mistake and beating herself up about it later, knowing that she was going to continue that cycle, she stopped and she did something different, right? If I didn't like the way my day went, I just jumped back in my bed, and it was funny to do it, but I had just set the intention, like, if I get back in my bed, I can start over again. So I did it as a joke, but it worked, right? So there's going to be times you're going to just play with things, but you can't keep doing what you're doing and expecting to get different results, right? That's the definition of insanity. You can't do that. So when somebody says, well, I can't stop, right? A client yesterday, she knows better, and she made a comment like, well, I just can't stop thinking that way. I said, yes, you can. You're just not being consistent in the choices that you're making, because they're different and they're uncomfortable. But that's kind of what we talk about, right? Like, how do you expect to be, growing things in your comfort zone? Like, literally nothing grows there. So if you find yourself struggling with not receiving a friend paying for your lunch, allow that person to do it. And you're going to say, I feel weird. And I'm going to say, so what? Feel weird. Work through the emotion of weird, work through the emotion of undeserving, because that's the only way you're going to be able to expose yourself so it doesn't bother you again. So I'm hoping that makes sense. Like, it probably is against the grain, which we're used to. That's what we're trying to make sure. Like, Angela speaks of imprinting. Tell them what that means, Angela, so they can better understand how they've been living off of these programs, these imprints, and the importance of us creating these new imprints in our lives.
So in our cells, in our DNA, down to the very tiniest of atoms that we have within ourselves, they're all coded with something. I mean, we have to start thinking of ourselves as ones and zeros, to be honest.
Right.
Because we are coded with things and most of the time we're coded with belief systems, we're coded with genetic imprints, which is scientifically proven, that we carry on these genetic dispositions or illnesses from our family history, blah, 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 right? And so we are codes. We are basically, our cells are encoded or are coded with these imprints, and these imprints transfer from like me to my children and to their children and to their children. They can be emotional, they can be through thought, they can be through traumas, they can be through wounds, physical, mental, emotional wounds, and spiritual wounds.
Oh,
yeah. Those are the worst. They can be on planet or off planet imprints. We have a tendency to believe that we're the only ones here in this big galaxy and universe that we live in, but that's not actually true. And we can be imprinted, coded from, alien beings or whatever you want to call them, but it can be on planet and off planet. So we have a lot of these codes within ourselves, which become imprints, and the codes become imprints as we pass them on. Now, we can change those imprints. All we have to do is be aware of them, and they generally show up as belief systems or emotions or wounds or traumas. And we can recode them. We can change the imprint. We can recode them into what we want just through our thought.
Oh my gosh, right? That's another, it's too easy to be true, but Once you are aware, like sometimes we do think that it has to be more complicated, but if you're aware of them and your desire is to change them, there are just simple ways that one can swap them. Like, what type of things do you recommend for your clients, Angela, that are struggling with allowing those imprints to be released and to welcome in new ones? Because that goes along with receiving, right? Like receiving new imprints. Yeah. So what do you kind of help them? What do you help them do? Like, give me an example of something you've helped people do to make sure that they're allowing, the old imprints to go and being ready for the new ones to be received.
Well, lots of different things. So it really depends on if you are able to forgive yourself. That's one of the biggest things, I think, to receiving, is being able to forgive yourself for believing in things, for following something that ended up not being who you wanted to be, for lots of different things. Forgiveness is a two-way path. It's for the self, which we are not taught about. Right. And it's for others. We're taught about that a lot, right? Especially through family experiences, I want to say. Mm-hmm. But we are not taught to forgive ourselves. And that's the most important thing, especially for receiving, for self-mastery, for, being worthy, feeling worthy, for like, that's another thing is, do you feel worthy of accepting or receiving, or, are you worthy? Like, we're not taught about those things either. So those are probably the two basic things that need to be addressed when we're making changes. And those are definitely linked to belief systems, and they're linked to emotions. And emotions are, can be a whole herd of cats or snakes. That's how I usually teach about them, is they're a ball of snakes and you got to pull one out at a time. And then sooner or later, they all sort of disperse, but you really need to figure out one of those emotions and then work with that, understand it. Like sadness, like, what is sadness really? Like, how do we even describe it, And do we know when it's real sadness, or is it guilt, or is it blame, or is it shame, or is it resentment? Right. Mm-hmm. So we have all these things, but we categorize them, but do we even know and understand what it feels like?
Exactly.
And how can you understand what resentment feels like when it's compounded by guilt, blame, all these hatred, sometimes all these other things, when we don't even recognize resentment? So, taking those emotions one at a time, that's probably the biggest part of the imprinting, is because everything is linked to an emotion, because we believe that we have an emotional experience here. And yeah, that's true, but they don't have to rule our life. Like, they don't have to dictate who we are, just like our thoughts don't have to dictate who we are.
Exactly. And even though they have up until now, hopefully now you know that there is a way of pulling things apart. And I love that you use snakes, because, cats sound kind of cute. But when she says snakes, it's like, oh yeah. So when we refer to the word work now anyway, right? It is the work of you grabbing the snake and pulling it apart from the bundle it's created. And then you go to the next one. And yes, there's fear around it. Yes, you don't know if the snake's going to bite, right? We don't know if they're poisonous, whatever. But I think people get to a point where they say, you know what, enough is enough. I'm tired of living this way, and I want change in my life. I want something different. So when we say work, it's, are you willing to pull the snake? Are you willing to look and know that there is a snake there? Because that brings up a ton of emotions, right? But if someone can teach you how to speak to your emotions, and if they can teach you how you control your emotions and not the other way around, is it not worth trying to figure it out? Right? We bring up the family dynamic again, Angela. Like, I know that, there's a lot of belief around, I inherited from my parents. Well, my mom's this way, so my dad's this way. That's why I am the way that I am. And so I always talk about normalizing, hey, this is what I've known, but I'm ready to learn different, because this is kind of getting old, right? And so I think a lot of people, what we don't do is really look at it and say, okay, even though it's going to be different for me, and even though I might have inherited some behavior, some traits or whatever, there is something like the work, Bruce Lipton's book, right? He talks about the biology of belief and epigenetics. Like, yes, that there are some things that we inherited, but the bigger percentage is your environment. And so if you're around people, if you're constantly telling yourself that you can't receive, or I have a hard time, you're creating an environment of disbelief, and that environment won't allow you to receive, even if you wanted to. So it's very important to look at the environment that you're in, honor where you came from, look at the things that you desire and start breaking it apart and say, you know what, I do feel this emotion. Why do I feel sadness? Just as Angela was explaining, like, what is sadness? When you start to really look at things like that, when you start to look at self-forgiveness, and I love that you say that because it's true, we're not taught to forgive ourselves. Like, you should have known better. It turns more into shame, right? And shame is like, it kind of paralyzes you, and then you don't do anything after that, right? Okay, it's shame, it's whatever the emotion is. I don't like it, and let me choose a higher vibration one. But when you sit there and you start pulling things apart, I know from my personal experience that when you start teaching people how to forgive themselves, what a value and worth looks like, they automatically start receiving. Every one of my clients, Angela, has made more money after working with me. They've actually had better relationships. They get better jobs. And it's not me. It's not me that, made this happen. It's because they've started working through their worth issues, their value. They started understanding forgiveness for self, and they allowed to receive new things to be imprinted into their lives, right? So I can say that, but it's not because of the work that I do. It's because of the work that they do. And they start realizing, I'm worth more money. I'm worth more than the relationship I have right now. I'm worth more than the car I'm driving. And not to say that those things didn't serve you, but a lot of us come from survival mode, right? And we talk about it, Angela, that we are no longer in survival mode. So if you're trying to do things to just survive, the energy doesn't support it anymore. So you're going to find yourself struggling even to be your old usual self, right? Have you noticed that? Like,
yes.
People can even be,
like it's,
oh, yeah, right? So share some experiences, because I love that face, because you're like, oh yeah, you're going to suffer even more just trying to be the old you, because the energy is like, hell no, honey, it's time to go.
Well, as we talked about last week, like, we're working through this sort of upgrade that we're doing into the new world, or this whole new kind of concept of unification and upgrading humanity, and I was, honestly, my intuition was trying to do it the old way. And I was like, oh, for me, that is struggling, because I'm like, that's who I am. I'm this very intuitive being, and I'm, and I know it. And it's like, and so I had to literally take a couple days and just say, okay, we can't do this like that any longer. What is the new way of receiving information for myself, particularly for myself, because that's the one that I struggle with the most. It always has been, really. I can get all kinds of information for everybody else, but it's me. It's me. And so literally I had to take a couple days and just like say to myself, and I was repeating it over and over and over, was, I'm not that anymore. I'm not that anymore. I can't receive that way anymore. I'm open to whatever way it is. Just show me, like I was talking to my soul self, and just show me, like, my new direction, the new visual, the new hearing. And by golly, it's more vivid. It's like quicker. It's like, so yeah, we have to be open to those kinds of, to the newness of who we are. And when we stay in those old patterns, there's nothing that makes me more angry in this entire world than believing things that 3 generations ago believed in, and we're still believing in them today. Like, who would I be if I still believed that I was meant to be poor, that I was supposed to be like oppressed, that I was supposed to be an alcoholic because that's a generational issue, that I was supposed to not use my intuition? Who would I be?
Oh my gosh.
Can you, I mean, really, but that's what we do to ourselves. We torture ourselves. It's literal torture.
Yeah. And when we stay in that state, I don't think people understand what they're doing to themselves, right? And yes, you can go with the flow, but I'm going to ask each and every one of you listening, like, have you tried to do things the old way and find you're struggling? Because like, you cannot get information the way you used to get it. Like, I loved watching Angela go through this. We're talking one day and I'm watching her body language, and she kept saying, they just keep telling me I can't do it the old way. And I mean, you've known that because, every time you die, to an old version of ourselves, like, you know, that you have to be different, and there is no instruction manual. So you literally have to just stop. Like, she literally had to take a couple of days to be like, okay, I'm fighting this. I'm trying to do it the old way, which is, you know, just last week's way of doing it. And they're like, yeah, no, you can't come in that way, or you're not going to get the information. So this is why it's important to work through your emotions, because you could get angry about it. You could be whatever about it. And that's how fine and dandy process it. But you're not going to get anything if those emotions are peaking. Like, you just can't hear. It's like you freaking go deaf and nothing comes in. But the minute you say, I'm going to stop fighting, this is another upgrade, I'm getting ready to transform, let me go ahead and see. And just kind of like what you did, right? When you made a mistake, you stopped and said, okay, let me go back and see what happened. So after we're like, oh, and then it's kind of like, okay, stop, listen, ask the question. And some of us don't like the answers, you guys. We don't like the answers. And guess what? So what? So what? Even if you don't like the answer, they're giving shortcuts. I notice, I'm sure a lot of you guys listening notice that things are happening a lot faster than they did before. Manifestation processes, right? Desires, money, relationships, everything's changing at a very fast pace. So we can try to chase it or stop and say, you know what, let me see how this works. It's kind of like you're playing jump rope, right? The faster the jump rope goes, you think you have to freak out. It's like, no, pay attention to the rope and then jump in when you're supposed to. And if you stop and say that instead of freak out because it's going faster, the whole dynamic changes, right? And the minute Angela was like, you know what, it is what it is, let me just stop, you got a vision like a day or two later, right? And it's kind of like, all I had to do was understand, remember, right? Because you know this already, remember that there's new ways always being birthed, right? So if we stay open to it, you guys, the transformation is way, 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 way faster. The information comes in a lot more clear, and there's just less static in life, right?
Well, yeah. So we have to start thinking of it like, you know, when we're doing these upgrades, or we're trying to improve our life, or we're trying to work through our doubt, which is what I had. I had a lot of doubt in those because I wasn't getting it the way it was before. So I would, you know, so there's doubt going in. I just had it again 2 days ago when I was like doing another upgrade, and, you know, and it's like, okay, just relax here a moment. We can always bail if it doesn't work out right. But I mean, come on, let's get on board here. So what I started doing was I started getting this visual of dial up, you know, like back in the day when we had dial up internet. And then it went to, I don't know, something else, and then 3G, and then fiber optic, and now we're into 5G. And what I heard was, we're operating in 12G. Stop trying to pretend like you're operating in 5G, because it doesn't work. It just doesn't work that way. You know, we're operating clear over here in 12G, and things are coming in so much quicker, and processes are working through quicker, and, like, you know, stop trying to do dial up when you're in 12G, because it's not going to work at all.
And it is a habit, you guys. So we totally get it. And that's how we're laughing, right? So we get the struggle. We understand. And for those of you that are ready to receive, you know, it's a very big, I'm ready to receive. There was an example yesterday, and I love to share examples because I really think that we can relate to many of them and how we think we want all these things. I'm ready to receive. I'm ready to receive. They were going to inherit like 100 acres of land in Mexico, and they were planning on starting, you know, this self-sustaining, awesome little ranch with growing all kinds of stuff. And so they get there and they end up only getting 10. And yesterday the conversation was, oh, but 100, whatever. I said, hey, it's kind of like you say you want to receive. If you get $10 million and you don't know what to do with it, and you're not prepared to receive it, to adequately figure out what to do with it, how can you, I mean, if you're not responsible for 10 acres, I'm sorry, if you're not responsible for 10 million, how can you get 100 million, right? So this is what we're trying to teach you guys. Let's start off with something small where you are right now, right? What you're allowing yourself to receive, like a lunch, somebody paying you for something, whatever. Look at it like the 10 acres of land. I told them yesterday, do what you need to do. 10 acres is a lot of land. Start with 10 acres. People are going to show up later and say, oh my gosh, I thought they were crazy, but look at what they created. Investors are going to come out of everywhere. All of a sudden, you're going to start getting more land, right? So let's look at the bigger picture. Even though we want $1 million, let's be realistic. Allow your friend to buy you lunch. Be responsible with keeping cash in your wallet. And some people don't understand the importance of this. Yeah. When I teach about money, It's so important to say, not say you don't have it or you're poor or whatever. Your words are very important, but receive and put money, cash into your wallet, because every time your eyeballs see that, your subconscious knows you always have it. And that's going to attract more of it. So be responsible with what you have right now, and more will be added to you, but you have to learn how to do it. Because if you have $1 million, you're probably going to end up giving it away.
Well, I think the key word that you used, Velia, was responsible. Being responsible for receiving.
Yes.
And what you're receiving, like the 10 acres, like that's a huge responsibility.
Exactly.
I mean, and can you handle 100 acres versus 10 and be responsible to the land, to the energy of the land, to the, whatever, if they're doing let's say they're growing crops, are they responsible for, crops that are going to actually feed and let humanity grow or animals grow? Like that's where we're headed as a human race. I thought about that on my drive home today when I was coming from the office, and it was like, okay, what are we going to be responsible for? And why don't we fight for the right thing to do, the responsibility of the right thing to do versus these crazy belief systems that are 500 years old that don't really fit us anymore. Right? So that again is receiving. It's like, what you said is like, yeah, we have to be open to receiving, but what comes with receiving? Responsibility, having the right mindset, attaching the right emotion and fighting for the right things. Like that's who we're becoming. Unification doesn't just mean that we're all going to be thinking the same way. Unification means that we are doing the right thing for the earth, for humanity, for animals, for plants, for trees, for the universe, right? Like it's huge responsibility here. And those who are playing that manipulative, controlling, domination kind of game aren't moving forward. They just won't be moving forward into this because there's not responsibility there.
Yeah. And I love how we teach that, because there is a part of like, you won't be moving forward if you can't take care of what you have and you can't be aware. And again, yeah, you're right, responsible to make the changes that you have to make, right? So it's funny because we talk about other people and what they get, but so many of us don't look inside and look at our own lives and say, okay, how can I be responsible with what I have? I might not have this much money or whatever, but am I being responsible with what I do have? Because the management of things is very important. This client was so focused on the 100,000 and it sounded fine and dandy. And I'm like, okay, but did you look at the land and whatever? Oh, we still need to do this. We still need to do that. And then on this side of those acres, there's like a plague that hit like those plants. I'm like, see, can you imagine if you would have gotten the 100 acres and figured it out later without you taking care of the 10 acres and the little plague that was going on over here, whatever it's called, plaga in Spanish. I forgot what they called it in English. But so the more we picked it apart, because they were like, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you want all this money, you want all this great life, whatever. But is it self-sustaining, right? First, you have to look at the foundation. So we want to encourage everybody to look at the foundation of your life, where you are, what you believe. Are you okay with receiving, first of all? What would it look like to have the designed life that you desire, right? And how would you sustain it? And so when you start asking those questions, you'll be surprised how much inner work there is to do right now, how much you need to prepare for it. Because again, there's people all the time, Angela, that win the lottery and then they're broke, not even a year later, right? And it's like, what happened? So like, we know, right? It's the imprinting. It was dumped there. They didn't know what to do. They weren't responsible. They didn't heal up emotions. They didn't heal up wounds. And so when people say, money can't buy you happiness, maybe, yeah. It can buy me more of it because I already have it, right? You can add on to, right? But how beautiful would it be if we got our foundation ready to build this, gorgeous house that we all want to live in, where you can just take care of yourself because you would already put the intentions into it. And Angela and I talk about it all the time. Like, we've designed our lives and it wasn't easy. We're doing the work and still constantly doing the work, but I have no desires that I can't go out and get. And it's not like it's a material thing, but you build your house in such a beautiful way where you work through forgiveness, you work through your worth and value. And so now the work that we continue to do just adds. And we made a joke, that if we had a whiteboard, I feel like my guides are like, what do you want next, Velia? And I'm like, I don't even know what to write because I'm so grateful for the abundance, but that wasn't me. It wasn't me. And if you're okay with being honest with yourself and working through your emotions and saying, thank you, parents, thank you, generations, but I got it from here, help guide me and protect me. And let's keep moving forward because we have new dimensions to create and to be a part of where control is not, what's ruling it, but it's more about the unification. And Angela, I talked about unification is a big old word, but what comes with that? And we did write down a big old list of the things. And today's like receiving. People have a really hard time receiving. Let's show them what they could do in their daily life to not struggle and to embrace it, not just welcome it, you guys. We're going a little beyond. We want you guys to learn to embrace it. If your friend buys you lunch, enjoy that lunch. Be grateful. Take a deep breath. Don't be like, I'll pay you back. I'm going to do it too. Don't try not to do that because then that means you didn't do the work.
Exactly.
I love people to deal with their emotions, right? Because they, I feel bad because they bought it. Okay, I'll pay you back. No. I got you next time. No. Sit down. You enjoy that lunch and feel all the weirdness that you have to feel because it does feel weird. Take a deep breath and that's the beginning of wisdom. That is the beginning of knowledge. That's the beginning of your transition to being a badass receiver.
Yeah, exactly. Agree. Do the work. I mean, honestly, is it uncomfortable to do the work? It can be. I mean, It can be as hard as you want it to be, honestly, but it can also be as easy as you want it to be. Being able to look at thyself is some of the most expansive work I've ever done in my entire life. Is it hard? Yeah, sometimes, but I make it hard through my belief systems and through my, I don't want to see that kind of thing. But, once you open up to it and you receive the real wisdom of it, and then you can rewrite your own story. Like, you don't have to be the victim of your parents. Well, it's not really the victim. Like, we're not really victims, but we think we are victims. Well,
Yeah.
Sometimes we are victims, but we don't have to be the victims of the beliefs of 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, right? Like, we don't have to live that way any longer because that's what free will is. We live in a world of freedom. It's supposed to be freedom. But the one that cages us the most and keeps us enslaved is this right here, our own mind.
Oh my God.
When we can free ourselves from that, we are open to all the abundance of the universe. So.
Right. I love how you use the word victim because that can play out in so many different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that have been victim of so many things, right? I love this quote. My niece just asked me yesterday, like, what's your favorite quote or whatever? And I love to say, like, you know what, even though trauma isn't your fault, it is 100% your responsibility to heal it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can sit here and blame, and this is the way, that's fine and dandy. Is it still working for you? Are you ready to heal it? Healing is fast, you guys. And like Angela said, it is a little uncomfortable sometimes, but the majority of times that it is because we think it is. So as you're healing, you're also going to be healing the reasons why you think things are complicated or that it should hurt more than it needs to hurt or longer or harder or whatever. But you start asking yourself those questions. And if you know it's your responsibility, it doesn't matter what happened. Yes, people will say, oh, well, it made me who I am. So what? Yes, it made you help contribute to who you are. But it doesn't mean you have to carry it on. And we don't have to blame people, but you need to start making choices. So if you say you want to receive and you're still having a hard time receiving a lunch, then you're not ready. You're not ready. So ask yourself, what do I need to do to get ready? Because I want a different life. And this is where the self-reflection comes in, journaling, meditation, start asking, what things do I need to remove in my life? What do I need to focus on to get ready to receive? And I promise you they're going to answer what that is.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Fun stuff. Ooh, girl, now I'm ready to receive some lunch. All that talk about lunch. I love food. I'm a foodie, so I have to always have food in my analogies, right? But this was fun, Angela. I love hanging out with you and talking about these things that I know are so important in people's lives, and they stay stuck. And it's so simple. It's so simple, to start working on it when you know what it is. It's like, I could pick it apart now. Okay, I don't know what it is. I don't know. Find out what it is and then start.
Yes, exactly. Like, just start. If nothing else, get a hold of Velia or I, and we will help you start. No joke.
And start.
Because we can't stay stuck.
I love how everybody has a different starting point, but yet it's all pretty much the same. So even though we're all different, the course or the literally what's designed to get you to where you go, it's a lot simple than you would think. It's a lot simpler. It's just crazy how it is. But once there's a willing heart, oh my gosh, literally life just starts changing a lot faster. Mm-hmm. I tell people all the time that the hardest part of my job is teaching people to live without their trauma. And they say, what do you mean? I would love to not have trauma. I would love not to have limitations. I was like, you know what? Your identity has been wrapped up in a lot of your trauma and a lot of your belief systems. So as you're healing and they're picking them apart and they start changing, now you have to decide how to be. There's a whole new way of you, because who you really are at the core is not your experiences and what they told you. It's exactly who you came in to be. So finding out who you are is fun. It's like a scavenger hunt. But you do have to allow yourself the time to heal and create the new identity that you were always designed to be. And that's what I find that people struggle with the most, Angela, right? I'm sure in your work as well, like, it's kind of like, who am I? Because my mom was an XYZ or my dad, but now I'm not like that. So it's kind of like, who do you want to be? And this is why we talk about creation, you guys, because you literally get to design who the heck you are and want to be. And even though you can't see the full picture, as long as you take the first step, we're guides. We help you take the next step. We've been up 10 steps. So when we come back and we're on one, we've already know what the next 9 look like, but we have to wait for you to get there. And it's always customized. And we're always there to make sure that you are feeling supported to jump over to the next step. So make sure you guys reach out if you need help. Continue to watch these podcasts. I'm going to call them freaking awesome ones, because I wish I had something like this when I was going through it.
Yeah.
So this is why Angela and I are here. This is our heart. We love you guys. We want to share, the amazingness that's on the other side of self-doubt and unforgiveness. So we'll hope that you guys will join us for the next podcast and reach out if you guys need help.
Thank you for being with us today. To find out more about Angela, visit her website at www.angelablaha.com. To find out more about Velia, please visit her website at www.coachvelia.com.